There's it's kind of a lake and a pond, and you drive through, and there's all good, ducks and geese are there quite a bit, cranes, this great kingfisher every once in a while. The other Saturday I was coming through, and I saw this hawk about 30 feet high, and I was going slow. You're supposed to go slow in that neighborhood, and I was that particular morning. And all of a sudden I saw that hawk dive in the water, and it went down with its talons and brought a fish out and flew off. Now I'd seen that like on Animal Planet. How many of y'all remember Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom? Okay? I'd seen that right before I had to go to church on Sunday evening. Had to go. Okay. But I'd never seen, as a country boy, I'd never seen it happen, in real time. Most amazing thing I could see. It made me think of a book that I have that I had read years ago by one of my best friends, Mike Brzezinski. Mike is, he was raised in New York, not in New York City, but New York, close to, well, the name of the town is Horseheads. And that's where he was raised. He was Green Beret backpacker, one of the toughest guys. He never saw B. A through college, A through seminary, and he let me hang with him. I was proud of that. And he wrote a book, The Tamer of Wild Hearts. It's about falconry. It's one of the most interesting books you'll ever have. He has 2 chapters in it that intrigued me beyond measure because I have observed the same thing. There's in the Bible, you have truths, absolute truths, you have promises, you have principles, you have warnings, but also the Bible shows you tendencies, okay? You have to be a little more alert and to have an overall picture of the Bible to see these tendencies. One of them is generational slide. There's a tendency for the first generation to come to Christ, serve God with a whole heart. The second generation, I've shared this with you before, a half a heart, and the third generation have no heart. The best illustration of that is David, Solomon, and Rehoboam. But there's several illustrations like that. But also there's illustrations in the second generation for of believers and godly people, for them to be haughty, proud, and arrogant. I found this pastoring. I love Christian education. I do. But I found the children that went to these Christian education, my children went there some, when they got to Sunday school and church, they already had that week. Just a real kind of attitude that I noticed even as a pastor and as an adult. I told my 3, they went, you ain't getting it. You're not having that attitude. I hate that attitude.
All right.
And but he identifies that in falconry. In 1960, falconry was turned around here in America. When people, had shotguns, falconry became less of anything of importance. It just became a sport that people would want to be a part of, not to put food on the table. And Mike was one of those guys, but in 1960, because of DDT and what it was doing to the shell of the peregrine falcon's eggs, and they were becoming extinct, that's when DDT became harder to get today, and a lot of pesticides. That's the reason it's harder to kill fire ants and the mosquitoes and everything. And so anyway, and the government took over regulations for trapping wild hawks. The best hunting hawks are those that have been born in the wild, and they've been there, raised by their mother there in the wild, and on their first migration, they're trapped. They've got the wildness in them. They've got the fear of man in them, but they've got some experience, but not too much experience to develop bad habits. So the best training comes from those that are caught early in the wild, and they're mindful of the animals. They know who they need to hunt. It's not just instinct, it's experience. And he says they're the best hunters. But because of regulations, most falconers can't do that. It's a bunch of red tape. Most of them get falcons that are hatched, from tamed falcons. And so the first people they see is usually their trainer. and they develop a kind of a, no fear, arrogant attitude toward their trainer. And they become hard to train because of the arrogance. Biblically, to show you this, there's some scriptures I wanted to share with you. 1 Samuel 8, 1 through 5. Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn, Joel, and the name of the second, Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took brides. Horrible. There's a tendency for that. Two of my sons went through that and through rebellion. My youngest son, Micah, a lot of you know him, some of you go to church with him. He begged me to do something else to make a living besides preach. Mm-hmm. He hated being the preacher's kid because he said, man, they just, no matter where I go, that's who I'm known as, even in public school, And when they were under, during Christmas time, a teacher should not put up mistletoe, in elementary school. There was this girl standing under there, and she was smiling, and I think it was Micah's, one of my sons, looked at her and said, yuck. And the teacher said, and you a preacher's kid. That's just a boy. And in the second grade. Now, if he had been in the sixth grade, it had been a whole different matter. But, I mean, Tim knows that. He knows that. So, anyway. But, there's a tendency to fight against that. But anyway, I wanted to read this. This is Mike Brzezinski. The child who is told all of his early life that God is love, salvation is free, they're sure to go to heaven, and when they die, tends to become a little bit disrespectful of the very God who promises such wonderful things. Often, I have seen this fearless attitude toward God played out among many second-generation Christians. I don't know how to tell you to overcome it, but let me tell you who did overcome it, because I don't want to just stop there. And I am hurrying. 2 Timothy 1:5. This is Paul writing about Timothy. When I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, Timothy, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, I'm persuaded it is in you also. Isn't that great?
That's good.
There's tendencies that you have to fight against, and that sliding is one of them, taking God for granted. I don't know if I look at Stacy. I don't know if God's always there. And I just saw y'all two, and it came to my mind. You have to overcome that. You have to be like Timothy. And here's his conclusion, and I love this conclusion, so I save the best for last. Mike writes, my son was raised in a Christian home. He told me once that he thought he didn't love God as much as I did because I had lived a wild life and been forgiven much. Mike was pretty tough before he got saved. He got saved at a McDonald's in a booth listening to a pastor share somebody else about how to be saved in the next booth.
That's what I'm talking about.
And Mike knew the pastor, but Mike got saved after listening to that. Any of you know Mike Brzezinski? Is here for a while. Okay. Just one of the smartest guys, greatest guys I've ever known in my life. But anyway, he'd lived a wild life and been forgiven much. Therefore, I loved God much. He, in some way, was wishing that he could have had that experience. I told him he had the best of both worlds because he did not have the gnawing memories of sin that I had. He could still love God and serve God better because of that upbringing. He knew that God loved him, but it took me several years to find that God loved me. He knew the Bible, but I struggled to learn it later in life. He has not wasted his life. I could not recall the years that I had wasted, Mike writes. The person raised in a Christian home is blessed above those who do not have such a blessed benefit.
Yeah.
That's the conclusion.
That's good.
And when I saw that hawk do that, I thought, man, I'd love to tame that falcon. But God can tame my wild heart, and he can tame yours. because in me is rebellion and plenty of arrogance. Okay? He contained the wild heart. Prayer request.